As we grow older, love doesn't always disappear, but something changes. There's a silence, a distance that wasn't there before, a quiet question that lingers between two people who once shared everything. Why do I feel so alone, even when we're still together? For many women, this shift happens slowly, after years, even decades, of marriage. She doesn't stop loving her husband. She just stops trying so hard. She no longer reminds him about his medication, no longer asks how his day was, no longer reaches for his hand at the dinner table. It's not anger, it's not bitterness. It's the quiet withdrawal that happens when a woman feels invisible in her own marriage. And here's the truth. It doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of emotional weight she's carried alone, of conversations that stopped too soon, of small moments that were ignored until they no longer felt worth fighting for. In this video, we'll explore the 9 real reasons why so many women, after a lifetime of commitment, begin to emotionally detach from the men they once adored. And if you're a husband, a wife, or simply someone trying to understand what happens to love in the later years, this just might change the way you see your relationship before it's too late. Sign 1. The slow drift. When love fades without a fight. Dear friend, most people think a relationship ends with a loud argument, a betrayal, or a door slamming shut. But that's not how it happens for most couples who've been together 30, 40, even 50 years. What really happens? It fades, quietly, slowly, softly, like a shoreline being pulled back by the tide. There's no fight, no final word, just a growing distance between two people who used to share everything. You still live under the same roof. You still eat meals together. You still talk about bills, the weather, the grandkids. But deep down, you feel it. That ache, that space, that quiet sadness you don't even know how to name. Let me tell you about Eleanor, 74. She's been married for 51 years. And one afternoon, while sitting beside her husband watching TV, she turned to him and asked, "Do you ever feel like we're strangers who just got really good at living together?" He didn't know what to say, and honestly, neither did she. Because how do you explain the kind of loneliness that lives inside a relationship that still looks fine on the outside? That's the slow drift. It doesn't come from one big mistake. It comes from tiny moments that were missed over and over. The hug you didn't give, the question you stopped asking, the story you wanted to share but kept inside because you weren't sure he'd really listen. None of it was malicious. No one meant to hurt the other, but the silence grew anyway. And now, you wonder, is this just what happens in marriage after a certain age? Or is there still a way to feel close again, not like roommates, but like partners? The answer isn't easy, but it begins here, by recognizing that love doesn't disappear in a single moment. It fades when we stop choosing it. And the beautiful truth? You can begin choosing it again by choosing you first. In the next part, we'll talk about something no one sees, but every woman feels, the invisible emotional weight you've carried for years, and how it quietly shapes the way you love. Sign 2. The emotional load. When you feel like you're doing it all. Dear friend, you've probably been carrying more than anyone realizes. Not just the laundry, the meals, the appointments, but the emotions, the remembering, the holding it all together. You remember birthdays. You sense when someone's upset, even when they say they're fine. You plan the holidays, manage the family group chat, refill the medications, keep everyone connected. And no one asked you to do it all. You just did. Because you care. Because for so many years, that was your way of loving. But here's what no one told you. When you carry everything for too long, especially alone, even love starts to feel like a weight. Let me tell you about Linda, 70 years old. For decades, Linda ran her household like a quiet general. She kept track of her husband's medications, their daughter's appointments, her grandchildren's allergies. She did it without complaint, but also without acknowledgement. And one day, she told us something simple and heartbreaking. If I stopped doing everything, I don't think anyone would notice until something falls apart. That's when you know the emotional load has become too heavy. Not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for too long without support. And the hardest part? Most men don't even realize it's happening. They think everything is fine. They don't see the invisible work. They don't know how much you hold inside just to keep the peace. Over time, this creates quiet resentment, Not because you don't love him, but because it starts to feel like you're carrying the entire relationship while he's simply living in it. But let's pause here. This isn't about blame. This is about awareness. Because sometimes step isn't changing your partner. It's asking yourself, where did I learn that I have to do it all to be loved? What would it feel like to put something down? And here's what we want you to know. You don't need to keep proving your worth by doing everything. Your value is not in your output. It's in your presence, your essence, your being. So if you've been feeling tired lately, not just in your body, but in your soul, that's not weakness. That's wisdom. It's your inner self saying, you've carried enough. Now it's time to carry you. In the next part, we'll explore a deeper layer of that exhaustion. When the conversations start to disappear and you begin to feel unheard, even in your own home. Sign 3, the conversation void. When words stop, love fades. In the beginning, it was easy to talk. You asked each other about your dreams. You stayed up late, whispering stories in the dark. You laughed over little things. You listened, really listened. But over time, something happened. The conversations got shorter, then they got quieter, and eventually, they just stopped. Now the only words are about errands, bills, groceries, nothing personal, nothing curious, nothing tender. This is what we call the conversation void. When two people still live under the same roof but haven't truly spoken in years. Dear friend, silence isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's where love goes to die. Let me tell you about Robert and Mary. They've been married for 47 years. At dinner, Mary used to ask, "How was your day? What book are you reading? What are you thinking about lately?" And Robert would smile, answer, maybe even ask something back. But now, they sit across from each other, eating in silence. The TV hums in the background, and the only question is, did you take your pills today? Mary doesn't ask anymore, not because she doesn't care, but because every time she tried, the response was short, distracted. Or worse, there was no response at all. So slowly, she stopped reaching out, not out of anger, but out of quiet heartbreak. Because here's the truth, when a woman no longer feels heard, she starts to disappear. She still cooks dinner, still folds the laundry, still remembers the names of every grandchild, but something is missing. Her voice, the part of her that used to feel alive, seen, interesting, has gone quiet. And over time, this silence isn't just between words, it becomes a silence between hearts. Sometimes it's not even anyone's fault. Life happens. There are bills to pay, children to raise, parents to care for, a home to maintain. Conversations that once bonded two people slowly fade, replaced by survival, schedules, and silent routines. And without shared conversations, there is no shared world. Now let's be honest. There's no such thing as a perfectly happy marriage. Only a marriage where both people are willing to grow together. Harmony doesn't mean agreement on everything. It means finding rhythm in spite of the noise. Mary didn't want Robert to become someone else. She just wanted him to care enough, to still be curious, to still see her. The worst part? Most men don't even realize it's happening. They think everything is fine. She's not yelling, she's not complaining. So things must be okay, right? Wrong, because when communication fades, connection dies. Not with a bang, but with a quiet, slow withdrawal. Mary used to dream of traveling with Robert after retirement. Now, she dreams of having a conversation that lasts more than 2 minutes. But dear friend, here's the hope. It's not too late. Even if you've grown apart, even if the words have stopped flowing, if both people are willing to listen again, there is still a path back to each other. You don't need to say something profound. You just need to ask, what's on your mind today? And then, really listen. Not to respond, not to fix, just to hear. Because when words return, so does warmth. When two people begin to speak again, really speak, the silence softens, and connection begins to heal. Up next, we'll explore the next hidden pain, the exhaustion of housework that never ends, even in your 70s, and why so many women feel like retirement isn't rest, it's just more work. Sign 4, the housework trap. When rest was promised, but more work arrived. Dear friend, you would think that after 40, 50, sometimes even 60 years of caring for others, a woman would finally get to rest. She's raised children, managed a home, tended to aging parents, and supported her husband through all of life's storms. But here's what's quietly true for far too many women. Retirement didn't bring relief. It just brought more housework and less appreciation. Let's talk about Linda, a 69-year-old retired nurse. For decades, she dreamed of peaceful mornings with her husband. She imagined the two of them reading on the porch, going on short trips, maybe learning how to dance. But now that they're both home, she cooks 3 meals a day. She cleans up after him. She reminds him of appointments. She even has to remind him where the remote is. And not once does he ask, "How can I help?" Linda told us something that broke our hearts. "Sometimes I feel like I'm not his wife anymore. I'm just his maid who happens to share a bed with him." That's the housework trap. Not because cleaning is bad, but because it becomes expected, assumed, invisible. Studies have shown that even in retirement, women over 65 do nearly twice as much housework as their husbands, and they do it with less energy, more joint pain, and zero recognition. It's not about splitting chores 50-50, it's about acknowledging her labor. It's about realizing that her time, her energy, and her well-being matter too. Because every dish washed without thanks, every floor swept without notice, every meal served in silence, adds to a quiet resentment that builds, not in her voice, but in her heart. And what makes it worse? Society expects her to smile through it, to be the good wife, the quiet helper, the one who naturally loves taking care of everything. But the truth is, she's tired. She wants to rest, not because she's lazy, but because she's spent a lifetime giving, and now she needs room to breathe. And here's what rest really means for a woman like Linda. Rest is not doing nothing. It's choosing to do something that feeds her spirit. Maybe it's painting, maybe it's gardening, maybe it's learning something new, or mentoring, or simply sitting alone with a book and a cup of tea, with no guilt, no interruption, no schedule. Rest is about shifting her energy from obligation to inspiration, from survival to self-love. Because after decades of giving herself to others, she deserves to give something back to herself. Dear friend, if you're a husband watching this, ask yourself, when was the last time I made her a cup of tea? When was the last time I offered to do the dishes without being asked? When was the last time I said, "You've done so much, let me take care of you today"? Because that one sentence, that one moment of care, can reignite a feeling she thought was long gone. And if you're a wife and you're nodding along right now, please know, your exhaustion is valid. Your time matters. You deserve rest. You deserve recognition. You deserve partnership. Coming up next, we'll explore what happens when a woman starts growing, evolving, and dreaming again. But her husband stays exactly the same. What happens when she outgrows the relationship and he doesn't? Sign 5. When you grow, but he stays the same. Dear friend, something changes inside many women after 60. It's not a midlife crisis. It's not a sudden rebellion. It's a gentle awakening. After decades of giving, serving, sacrificing, you begin to ask, what about me? You start walking in the morning, not for exercise, but for space to breathe. You sign up for a book club. You start writing, gardening, praying, or painting, not because someone told you to, but because it brings you joy. And for the first time in a long time, you feel alive again. But here's the quiet heartbreak. You're changing, and he isn't. Let me tell you about Evelyn, a 70-year-old retired teacher. After years of caring for her children, her students, and her husband, Evelyn finally had time to care for herself. She started volunteering. She joined a writing group. She took a trip with a few friends and laughed harder than she had in years. But when she came home and shared her excitement with her husband, he barely looked up. He said, "Why are you doing all that? We're old now." That one sentence didn't just disappoint her, it cut her. Because in that moment, she realized he didn't see the woman she was becoming. He only recognized the version of her that once lived for everyone else. And the gap between them began to grow, not out of anger, but out of unshared growth. Dear friend, this happens in many marriages. One person begins to expand, to explore, to evolve, and the other stays anchored to the past. But here's what we've come to understand. There is no perfect marriage. Only a marriage where both people are willing to grow, together or side by side. And even when that's not happening, there's something more powerful than waiting or blaming. It's called containment. It's the gentle, patient act of holding space for your partner, even if they don't understand you yet. Maybe your husband isn't resisting your growth. Maybe he just doesn't know what it means. because no one ever taught him how to welcome change, especially not in someone he loves. Maybe he's afraid he'll lose you to something he doesn't understand. So instead of demanding his approval, share your joy. Show him how your growth makes you calmer, kinder, happier. Tell him how this makes your time together richer, not farther apart. Let him see that your light doesn't threaten him. It includes him. Growth doesn't mean leaving him behind. It means inviting him forward. Slowly, gently, with love. And if he still doesn't move, then you keep becoming. You don't shrink to stay the same. You rise, and trust that those who love you will rise too. And if you're the husband watching this right now, don't be afraid of the woman your wife is becoming. She is not leaving you. She is returning to herself, and that version of her may love you even more deeply if you welcome her. Coming up next, we'll explore one of the most tender unspoken losses in long-term love. When physical and emotional intimacy begins to fade, and two people, still under the same roof, slowly stop reaching for each other. Sign 6, the loss of intimacy. You still sleep together, but you're miles apart. Dear friend, you still sleep in the same bed. You still eat the same meals. You still ask, did you take your meds? What time is your doctor's appointment? But somehow, you feel lonelier now than when you lived alone. You lie beside each other, night after night, yet the space between your bodies feels colder than winter. You reach for his hand under the blanket, and he's already turned away. No words, no rejection, but also no return. This is what no one tells you about aging. Sometimes the greatest heartbreak isn't being abandoned, it's being invisible to someone who's still right there. Let us tell you about Dorothy, 73 years old. Every night, she turns off the light, folds her hands, and stares at the ceiling. Her husband Bill is beside her, breathing, snoring, real. But to her heart, he's become a shadow. She used to run her fingers along his shoulder. Now she folds them into fists, quietly, so he won't notice. And in the morning, when he brings her coffee, she smiles, but there's something missing behind her eyes. Not because the love is gone, but because the connection is asleep, and no one's reaching to wake it up. Here's what we've come to understand. Intimacy is not just about sex. It's about being chosen, again and again, even when your skin has changed, even when life has worn you down, even when the passion is now a whisper. Most people think physical distance means the love has faded, but often it's fear, it's shame, it's thinking maybe they don't want me anymore. So no one reaches because no one wants to feel rejected. But dear friend, what if your partner feels the exact same? What if your silence is being mirrored, and both of you are waiting for the other to make the first move? So, here's our invitation. Don't wait to feel wanted. Be the one who reaches first, not for a body, but for a moment of presence. A hand on the back while passing in the hallway. A gentle, you looked beautiful yesterday. A whispered, do you still remember our first kiss at the breakfast table? Not to fix, not to force, just to remind them, I still see you. Because the truth is, many couples stop touching long before they stop loving. And the miracle? Touch can return. With softness, with patience, with warmth that asks for nothing in return. If you're the one who misses it, say so. Not with blame, but with courage. And if you're the one who is pulled away, please know, it's never too late to turn back around. The most intimate thing you can say to each other, after all these years, might simply be, I miss you. Coming up next, we'll explore a quiet shift that surprises many couples, retirement, the time when you're finally together, but suddenly feel suffocated. Sign 7, the retirement shift, when you're together all the time, but feel further apart. Dear friend, you used to wish for this. No alarms, no deadlines, no running from place to place, just the two of you, finally time to be together. But no one tells you what happens when you're together all the time, yet still feel like you're drifting apart. You'd think more time means more connection. But for many couples, retirement quietly becomes something else. A routine without rhythm, a closeness without curiosity, a togetherness that feels lonely. Let me tell you about Deborah, 69 years old. When her husband retired, she was hopeful. She imagined slow breakfasts, quiet walks, maybe learning something new together. But instead, she found herself answering the same question, day after day. What's for lunch? Deborah wasn't angry, she was exhausted. Because now that they were both home, it felt like all the invisible work she used to balance just doubled. He didn't mean to overwhelm her, but he hadn't built a life of his own. And suddenly, she became his calendar, his caretaker, and his entertainment committee. And that's when Deborah realized something painful. I thought retirement would give me back my time, but it just gave everyone else more of me. Dear friend, this is what we call the retirement shift, when the life you dreamed of slows down, but doesn't feel like yours anymore. Instead of freedom, you feel pressure. Instead of rest, you feel responsibility. Instead of peace, you feel crowded, not just in space, but in your mind. And here's the deeper truth. Retirement doesn't create disconnection. It reveals it. Because without distraction, without busy schedules, you suddenly see what was missing all along. The hobbies that never happened, the conversations that stopped flowing, the joy that quietly faded while you were holding everything else together. But here's what can change everything. You don't need to fill every moment together. You need to fill your own life first. This is not about growing apart. It's about growing individually so that you can return to each other full, not empty. So start with this gentle shift. Instead of planning every meal, plan 1 hour just for you. Instead of asking, what should we do together today? Ask, what would light me up right now? Maybe it's a walk alone. Maybe it's learning something new. Maybe it's finally doing that thing you used to love. Not for anyone, just for you. And here's the key, dear friend. Don't just wait for retirement to feel better. Start learning how to live better. Learn how to enjoy your own company. Learn how to create joy that doesn't depend on anyone else's mood. Learn how to nurture your spirit and design a life that feels meaningful, even in quiet seasons. Because when a woman keeps learning, she keeps growing. And when she grows, she doesn't just survive retirement, she transforms it. Here's the beautiful paradox. The more you enjoy your own life, the more your marriage becomes enjoyable again. Because love grows best when both people are alive inside, not just present on the outside. So if you're a husband watching this, don't fear your wife's new energy, her curiosity, her independence. It's not a sign she's pulling away. It's a sign she's coming home to herself, and she's inviting you along for the journey. And if you're a wife, you don't need to choose between being a good partner and living a full life. You can be loving and free. You can be committed and curious. You can be together without disappearing. Because harmony in marriage doesn't mean always being side by side. It means learning to walk beside each other without blocking the sun. Coming up next, we'll talk about one of the most painful parts of any long-term love. When you feel unheard for so long, you finally stop speaking, not out of anger, but out of quiet, aching disappointment. Sign 8, when you stop talking, not because you're angry, but because you're tired. Dear friend, in the early years of marriage, you probably shared everything: meals, laughter, plans for the future. And when something didn't feel right, you said so. You spoke up. You thought, if I explain how I feel, he'll understand. But over time, something shifted. You spoke, but nothing changed. You tried again, softer, kinder, clearer. Still nothing. Eventually, it felt easier to just stop. Not because you stopped caring, but because you were tired. Tired of repeating yourself. Tired of feeling like you were asking for too much. Tired of being met with silence, or worse, indifference. This is what psychologists call learned helplessness. It's when a person tries to make something better, but keeps hitting a wall until they finally give up. You don't stop speaking because you don't love him. You stop speaking because you don't believe he's listening anymore. Let's take Susan, 68 years old. She once told us, I used to talk about how lonely I felt, even though we lived together. He'd nod, change the subject, or say I was too sensitive. Now I just keep it all inside. And the heartbreaking part? Her husband thinks everything is fine, because she's no longer complaining. But Susan isn't fine. She's quiet, because she's disappointed. And under that disappointment is grief. Grief for the version of their marriage she hoped they'd still have. So what now? Here's the truth most people overlook. The longer you stay silent, the more disconnected you feel, not just from your partner, but from yourself. And here's the opportunity. You may not be able to control how he responds, but you can reconnect with your own inner voice. You can ask, what do I need right now, with or without his attention? Where in my life have I stopped showing up, even for myself? What makes me feel alive even when he doesn't join me? Because the psychology is clear. When you focus entirely on changing someone else, you feel powerless. But when you focus on rebuilding yourself, you feel strong again. And if you find yourself constantly longing to be noticed, to be filled, to be reassured, we invite you to pause and ask, am I looking for someone else to give me what I haven't yet given myself? Because sometimes that aching feeling of not enough is not just about your relationship, it's a sign that your soul is asking you to turn inward, to love yourself more, to spend time with yourself, to care for your own heart as deeply as you've cared for everyone else's. And what's beautiful, when you start giving yourself what you need, the emptiness begins to fade. You don't feel as desperate for his words, his actions, his presence, because you're no longer waiting, you're living. And here's something unexpected. The more at peace you are with yourself, the more magnetic you become. You're not pushing, you're not shrinking, you're simply being with grace, clarity, and quiet confidence. And that kind of presence, it draws people in. Sometimes even him, back toward the version of you he forgot he admired. So yes, speak up if you still have the energy, but don't wait forever for him to get it before you begin living again. Sometimes the most healing conversation is the one you finally have with yourself. Coming up next, we'll talk about what happens when a woman finally realizes life is short and she deserves more than just existing. She deserves to feel alive again. Sign 9, the awakening, when you realize life is short and you want more. Dear friend, there comes a moment, quiet, private, undeniable, when a woman looks at her life and thinks, is this it? It doesn't always happen on a birthday or a holiday or a big anniversary. Sometimes it happens in the most ordinary moment. You're folding laundry, or standing at the window, or brushing your hair in front of the mirror. And suddenly, something inside you whispers, I've spent my whole life taking care of others, but have I truly taken care of me? You don't feel angry, you just feel honest. You feel the weight of years spent giving, surviving, managing, enduring. You realize you've been so busy holding everything together that you forgot to ask if you were actually happy. And that moment, dear friend, that is the awakening. Let us tell you about Marianne, 72 years old. She's a mother, a grandmother, a wife of 50 years. One morning, she told us, I looked at my hands, these same hands that have cooked thousands of meals, cleaned 1,000 floors, held babies, wiped tears, and I asked them, what are we doing today, for us? That one question changed everything. Because Marianne realized something simple, but life-altering, she didn't want more years of feeling fine. She wanted years that felt meaningful, alive, honest. And the truth is, you might be feeling that way too. Not because you've stopped loving your partner, but because you finally started listening to yourself. You want more connection, more joy, more purpose, more days that feel like they belong to you, not just to everyone else. But let's be clear, wanting more doesn't make you selfish. It makes you awake. It means you finally see the truth. That time is precious, and no one, no partner, no child, no circumstance can give your life meaning if you're not living it fully from the inside out. So what can you do now? Start small. Take a walk alone, not to escape, but to return to yourself. Pick up a book that's just for you. Start writing, dancing, painting, singing. Talk to a friend who sees the real you, not just the role you play. And if you feel brave, talk to your husband, not to accuse, not to demand, but to say, this is where I am now, and I hope you'll walk with me, even if you don't understand it yet. Because when a woman awakens, she doesn't need permission, but she does hope for companionship. And if he's not ready, that's okay too, because this part of your life is yours to reclaim, with or without applause. You've earned this chapter, and it can be the most beautiful one yet. Dear friend, you've walked with us through this journey, through silence, sacrifice, distance, and rediscovery. And now we hope you see. Love doesn't die in one moment. It fades in the moments where you stop showing up for yourself. But it can be reignited, gently, honestly, when you begin again from within. So here's our question for you. What's one thing, just one, you can do today to feel more like you again? Is it a choice, a boundary, a deep breath, a conversation, or maybe a small, quiet beginning? And dear friend, if you've been feeling unloved, overlooked, or invisible, don't rush to blame yourself. And don't rush to blame him either. Because real love, the kind that lasts, is unconditional. But when your heart begins to ache in that kind of love, it's not a punishment. It's a signal that something in your life is asking for more color, more curiosity, more meaning. Maybe it's time to explore something new, to learn again, to create again, to dream again. Not because something is broken, but because your spirit is ready to expand. Let the ache be an invitation, not to leave, but to live, to make this next chapter not just longer, but richer. And here's one more truth we hope stays with you. A happy marriage is not something you find, it's something you build, and it starts by building yourself. When you begin loving yourself, not as a reaction, but as a rhythm, when you create joy in your own day, when you grow your own peace, when you fill your life with meaning that isn't dependent on anyone else, your marriage transforms, not because he changed, but because you did. And from that place, you become the kind of woman who no longer waits to be loved, but becomes love itself. Whatever you choose to do next, know this: you are not too old, it is not too late, and your best days are not behind you if you're willing to choose yourself now. This is timeless wisdom, where every minute you give to your health, your truth, and your joy today becomes a gift for your tomorrow. Take care, dear friend, and thank you for being brave enough to listen all the way through.